Thank you for stopping by Echo Base Network. I am the coach. Today we are looking at an article from Gizmodo that basically reveals how much lying Kathy Kennedy and Michelle Rejwan are doing leading up to Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. They are exposed. They are exposed. And you know what? The coach is going to get them. Welcome, if you've not seen one of these, to a brand new episode of Lessons from Coach, Classes in Session.
Echo 3 to Echo 7. Mono, buddy. 3 Echo Station 3PA.
So here we are at Gizmodo. Let's take a look at this article. Star Wars Kathleen Kennedy on the long road to ending the Skywalker's story. Skywalker's story. So far, we know that includes two people, Anakin and Luke. All right, let's check it out. Germaine Lucier. I don't know. I'm not sure. Yesterday, 3:40 p.m. Gizmodo. Here we go. Before Star Wars belonged to Disney, it belonged to Kathleen Kennedy. George Lucas himself picked the legendary producer to run his beloved namesake, Lucasfilm, before Mickey Mouse swooped in and bought it all up. And at that time, the plan was always this: a new trilogy of films which ends later this month in Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. It's been quite the ride for Kennedy, who, along with The Force Awakens, The Rise of Skywalker producer Michelle Rejwan sat down with IO9 in Los Angeles earlier this week. The pair talked about the difficulty in crafting not just a satisfying conclusion to the one saga, but a trilogy of trilogies. We also looked back at the past and how earlier versions of Episode 9 didn't work, and how much, if at all, was discussed way back in development on The Force Awakens. We're not going to look at this entire article. We're just going to kind of pick apart three different smaller subsections. So there they are, right there, the Fantastic Three: Michelle Rejwan, J.J. Abrams, and the Empress, Kathleen Kennedy. So, IO9 asks, when you made The Force Awakens, obviously there was some discussion about where this could all go. Rian Johnson then came in and took the story in his direction, and now J.J. Abrams is back to finish everything up. Looking back, was there a reason why the beats of the entire trilogy weren't cemented around Episode 7, and has that lack of structure been a benefit in retrospect? So, good first question there. Kathy Kennedy. Well, first of all, when we sat down to do Force Awakens, we spent a great deal of time working out all three movies and doing a real deep dive on the previous six and talking about that, understanding the mythology that George Lucas had created, bringing in people who had worked on those films, been a part of Lucasfilm. We brought in 2 or 3 different writers. There were, 8 of us, usually sitting in that room and whiteboarding what the possibilities are and looking at character arcs, identifying. Because George had already gone to Harrison, Carey, and Mark to do the film, so we knew that was a given. That we were bringing them back into the trilogy and we're introducing new characters, so we had a sense of where this was going. But the important thing is, I like to look at the first 3 movies that George did where he had different directors. He was really serving as the producing role in that. And we were doing a similar kind of thing, which is identifying genre and really allowing a filmmaker, and in the case of JJ and Ryan, huge Star Wars fans, and allowing them to get immersed, to find the center of the story and then make it their own. It's obviously important, as George has always said, to have meaning in these movies. And as a director, I think every director should have something to say in what it is they're trying to do, and they need to find what's personal for them. In addition to something like Star Wars, which has this incredible fan base that cares so deeply, that wants to believe that we're as immersed in that process as they are, that we're looking at the nuances and the importance of the mythology that are there. And I can tell you that this is absolutely what goes on. It's endless conversations along those lines. So you say cemented. I don't think anything's ever cemented with Star Wars. It can't be. It's so rich with possibility that you don't want to reach a point where you think you've made a decision and then not leave yourself open to exploring other possibilities and other considerations. And when you get a lot of smart people in the room who are all Star Wars fans, that's never going to stop. And I've certainly found in the 7 years now that we've been doing that, that's what makes this so much fun. as we add people to the family and those voices become important voices to the creative process. We're going to skip over what Michelle says right here. IO9, you say you can't cement something in Star Wars, and yet the marketing calls this the end of the Skywalker saga. No matter what happens in this movie, the story could go on. So isn't it putting the label on it creatively constructive? Kennedy, it's only creatively constructive with regard to the Skywalkers because the saga really references the Skywalker family, and that's what we're bringing to a conclusion. There's an inevitability with that because of the actors and the characters they're playing. So that's really what we're looking at more than anything. At least in my lifetime, there's never going to be an end to Star Wars, so this isn't the end of Star Wars, it's the end of the family saga. Alright, IO9. This is where we're going to finish this article. One of the big decisions made by JJ and Chris Terrio was bringing back the Emperor in some form. Was there a worry that bringing back the villain of the previous two trilogies would undercut the endings achieved in those two trilogies? Michelle Rejwan jumps in. I think there was a feeling of inevitability that Palpatine had been a part of all three, and in the biggest picture of 9 movies, he has been there from the very beginning. And his presence in this movie, we will not spoil that. But when you see it, it does feel to us, not only does it have the feeling of inevitability, but the ending of where we left him last in Return of the Jedi was very important to JJ and Chris and to all of us. We discussed it at great length, so no, I don't think so. I think it definitely feels as though it is in the DNA of the 9, and it felt appropriate to have his presence be in this movie. And that is an article at Gizmodo that released yesterday featuring Kathy Kennedy and Michelle Rejwan. Let's dig into this thing. We're going to consider this assignment a group project, meaning that Kathy Kennedy, Michelle Rejwan, and even J.J. Abrams will be receiving a grade today. Be warned, I'm not easy. Gizmodo asks some pretty good questions here. Just for our education, Gizmodo is a design, technology, science, and science fiction website. It includes the subsite IO9, which focuses on science fiction and futurism. As always, we begin with the title, Star Wars Kathleen Kennedy on the Long Road to Ending the Skywalker Story. This title certainly generated some interest for me when I first came across it. We've had constant reminders from Disney that this is the end of the saga, and now it's referred to as the Skywalker's plural story. I'm thinking most viewers recognize the end of the proposed Skywalker story with the death of Luke at the end of The Last Jedi. However, with Luke playing such a small part in both Episode 7 and 8, one could argue that the Skywalker story ended in 1983. The writer goes on to say, the pair, Kennedy and Rejwan, talked about the difficulty in crafting not just a satisfying conclusion to the one saga, but a trilogy of trilogies. We also looked back at the past and how earlier versions of Episode 9 didn't work, they said. As I read this, I have to wonder who exactly this duo is trying to satisfy with the conclusion of this trilogy of trilogies. We have 7 years of confirmation that Disney has been carrying out its own agenda with each theatrical release. The only time I felt that Disney was in accordance with the main fan base was with Rogue One. I know this has been said over and over that Rogue One was good Star Wars, but many have forgotten a quote from the man himself, Bob Iger, on the eve of Rogue One, where he said, "Rogue One is not a film that is, in any way, a political film. There are no political statements in it at all. This is a film that the world should enjoy. And as we sit just 9 days away from a 3-year anniversary of Rogue One, I think about how right Bob Iger was. Which leads me to question, who is really in charge at Disney? Because Kathy Kennedy and J.J. Abrams certainly cannot make the same claim. Zachary Lehman from RT.com wrote yesterday, "If Star Wars continues to put going woke before telling compelling stories, then it will continue to go broke. Rise of Skywalker is already reportedly underperforming in advanced ticket sales, and that's on the heels of Solo being an embarrassing flop and The Last Jedi souring fans. It's hard to have hope at this point that things will change, especially considering Abrams' new giddy comments about the LGBTQ representation in this movie. But Star Wars is a franchise that was built on hope, so maybe, just maybe, Disney will get its head out of the sand and make this franchise great again soon." IO9 questions Kennedy and Rejwan, saying, "Was there a reason why the beats of the entire trilogy weren't cemented around Episode 7, and has that lack of structure been a benefit?" What a great question. I can't tell if Kennedy was prepared for such a question, but the question itself is an excellent one. If an adolescent were to ask the exact same question, but use adolescent language, they would simplify it to the point of just saying, "Did you guys really have a plan back in 2012? Kennedy mentions the great deal of time working out the 3 movies. All 3 movies when they sat down to do The Force Awakens. Well, that's an interesting comment. I wish there was a shred of evidence to support this claim. The last director, Rian Johnson, tweeted, "I'm sure they talked about where it might go on early, but when they came to me there was no map story presented beyond The Force Awakens." And as far as that is concerned, I'm feeling Jenny's comment. Jenny, I got your number. I need to make you mine. 8675309. Kathy then mentioned the beloved cast of Star Wars. Notice, I didn't say the original trilogy. I said Star Wars. She said George had already gone to Harrison, Carey, and Mark to do the film, so we knew that was a given. That we were bringing them back into this new trilogy and we're introducing new characters. So I can infer that Kathy is really saying, the cast of the original trilogy is back and we are making this about the new characters and we had a plan. Kathy is a pro at Hollywood speak, development his main priority. George Lucas was still involved throughout the entire process, and like any good leader, he got exactly what he wanted. You say of yourself, we were doing a similar kind of thing, but I just don't see it. Finally, Michelle Rejwan speaks up and participates in this assignment. She says, "This movie has had such a tremendous challenge in synthesizing not only the new trilogy but 9 films. The word synthesize means combine a number of things into a coherent whole. Michelle throwing the Emperor and a Sith artifact into the final film and making them major plot points does not provide any synthesis. The Emperor is popping up out of nowhere, seriously. And when has a Star Wars feature film used a Sith artifact with supposed magical powers as part of any story? You have learned Hollywood speak from Mrs. Kennedy extremely well, but your words are empty." Kennedy then goes on to say, "The saga is referencing the Skywalker family, and that's what we're bringing to a conclusion. There's never going to be an end to Star Wars, it's the end of the family saga." More Hollywood speak with empty words. I challenge anyone to explain to me how The Force Awakens or The Last Jedi continues the Skywalker family saga. Kathy, saga means a long story of heroic achievement, or it can mean a long, involved story, account, or series of events. As the teacher, I hate to see when my students work so hard on the wrong thing, and when they lack understanding to the point where their final product is deficient. Kathy, this is definitely the case for you, as you claim to have worked so hard in the beginning of 2012 on the saga. I would actually be more happy with your work if you did in fact continue the Skywalker family story in your new trilogy, but you did not. Obviously, I haven't seen the movie yet, But even if you make Rey a Skywalker as soon as you can, let's say in the first one just threw Kennedy under the bus. IO9 asked about JJ and Chris Terrio's decision to bring back the Emperor. Chris Terrio's involvement with Star Wars only began in 2017 as a writer for The Rise of Skywalker. Kathy claims they were all hard at work in 2012 and had their plan. J.J. Abrams can say he had thoughts about bringing Palpatine back all he wants to when he was directing The Force Awakens. At this point, none of that is believable. Kathy and Michelle, you are quite versed in Hollywood speak, and you can use words to blind many in the general public. However, you can't fool the teacher. You claim to have worked super hard on your project. You fail to understand basic words such as saga. You try to justify the inclusion of Palpatine being desperately thrown into the final act, like a right fielder making a throw to home plate in the bottom of the ninth with the game tied. For this assignment, ladies, you receive and I don't believe anything you say. You lie to us over and over and over. And unfortunately, we need to call your parents because you will have to repeat this year, but I don't want you in my class. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. Please, please, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. We are thrilled that you are here. Special shout out to one of our youngest fans. His name is Jax, also known as Bubba. He is the 6-year-old son of my friend John, and we go to church, and Bubba, we'll see you tomorrow morning. I am the coach. We are, and you are, Echo Base Network, and you have been taught. We are out.